All right. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, everyone, wherever you're listening from. This is Follow the Money brought to you by Nairametrics. All right. Yes, we do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30. Wherever you're listening from, you can actually download, you can also actually stream this on any podcast platform that you typically listen from. So this recording will be ready in the next few hours. So in case there's any part of the show you wanted to listen to, you can always go back. And of course, you can go back and listen to previous episodes as well. All right, what a busy week it was last week. So we're going to be following the money with a number of very interesting news. The first one that hit me this one, like it wasn't even on the plan today. It wasn't even on queue as one of the things to discuss, but it kind of popped up in the news. And the gist is that you remember the guys on Binance, the guys that were two Binance executives that were detained, that have been detained for some weeks now. So the gist this morning on Premium Times, I mean, you can check it out. You can check it out on my Twitter handle, that Ugodre. I kind of commented on it. The gist is that, one of the guys escaped. Yeah, one of the guys escaped. They claimed that he, they allowed him to go to the mosque, Ramadan and stuff. So he went to the mosque. And then from there, somehow, this guy just managed to grab a Kenyan passport because he had a UK passport with him. Managed to grab a Kenyan passport and then hopped on the plane and then escaped out of Nigeria just like that. Seems like something you would watch on Netflix. It looks like one of those movies that we can see. Anyway, but that's the gist this morning. So a lot's still coming out. No one is really sure how this happened. Authorities haven't really come out to explain what happened here, but that is the first gist this morning. So I just thought to break it here in case you haven't read it. Go read it. It's somewhere in Premium Times. Okay. One of the guys escaped, right? Crazy. Anyway, back to the gist of the day. So last week, a lot of stuff happened. Very eventful week last week, and we'll start with debt. Nigeria's public debt today, or as at December 31st, 2023, rose 10% quarter, from the previous quarter to 97.3 trillion. That's our public debt today as a country. Before now, it was 87.9 trillion, but it's now 97.3 trillion. So gradually close to the 100 trillion mark in terms of public debt. That's a total debt that Nigeria owes domestically and externally. And when I say Nigeria, I mean the federal and state governments. And if you look at that debt closely, it's also broken down into different, holders of the debt, different creditors. And so the first would be FGN bonds, which you and I typically buy through our pension fund. So FGN bonds is about 44.2 trillion. That rose from 43.2 trillion. Year on year. That's between December last year and December 2022 and December 2023. And then Nigerian treasury bills as well, we have at about, 6.5 trillion. And then we'll have Nigeria's saving bond at about 39 trillion. Thereabout. And then we'll have Sukuk at 1 trillion, and we'll have promissory notes at 1.3 trillion. Of course, states as well also. So in total, we have about 59 trillion for Nigeria's domestic bonds. And then for foreign bonds, foreign debt comes about 42 or so billion dollars, and most of those debts is owed to the World Bank. So the World Bank alone, Nigeria owes the World Bank about 17 or so billion dollars. Wow. And then we also owe China. China, we owe about $5 billion. China is the country that Nigeria owes the most in terms of debt to any country at all. So China, we owe $5.1 billion, and then African Development Bank, we owe $4.6 billion in terms of debt. Another significant, creditor that we owe. And of course, in terms of single largest foreign creditor out there is Eurobonds, which a lot of us also invest in. Nigeria owes $15.1 billion in Eurobonds. And this is down from $15.6 billion a year ago. So in total foreign debt is $42.4 billion dollars. So what is kind of interesting in all of this is, from what we see, the current government's debt has increased by about 4 trillion in just a little over 6 months, and that's domestic debt. Not even talking about foreign debt. So from a domestic debt standpoint, you would see that the government, the current government, has sort of increased that number, and that number is likely going to get bigger by the time the NBS, by the time the DMO comes up with the new figures. Let's say in June, by half year, you're going to see the debt, that 4 trillion likely double, because already we've done about 2 trillion or so in treasury bills this year, even though some of the money were refinanced old treasury bills, so it's not like they're new treasury bills. But because of the central bank's policy of trying to pump up money supply, you're likely going to see a lot more debt on our public debt profile. Let's just remember that the government is trying to attract foreign investors, foreign portfolio investor inflow by giving out high interest rate. That way you can have exchange stability. So those all add up to our standard. So pretty interesting data out there for the NBS. And what does this mean for all of us? Well, I mean, they'll tell you that what you should look at is Nigeria debt to GDP. So if our GDP is about 240 or so trillion naira, then debt to GDP is almost, Nigeria's debt to GDP is crossing 30% or more. So if you look at 97 and divide that by, let's say, 240, that's about actually 40%. 40% debt to GDP. So we used to boast of debt to GDP of below 20% at some point in this country. For some time, we started boasting debt to GDP of 30%, and we kind of always thought it wasn't a problem. But as things stand, our debt to GDP is now, little over 40%, 42%. GDP is actually 229 trillion, 230 trillion, and then you have total public debt 97 trillion. So if you do the math, that's about 42% debt to GDP. So little room to keep expanding debt to GDP. Yes, most people will tell you that don't look at debt to GDP. You want to look at Nigeria's, ability to service debt. So debt service to revenue ratio, that kind of number people tend to look at. And from a Nairametrics article that I saw this morning, we did spend over 7 trillion or so servicing debt last year alone in this country. That's just astonishing. Over 7 trillion servicing debt last year alone. And so if that's what we're spending servicing debt, then you're likely going to crowd out, capital expenditure, because our capital expenditure is we're not even spending anywhere close to that for capital expenditure, even though we see that we're spending more than that now on debt service. So that is it on public debt from public debt perspective from the news that we got. Like I said, the country that spends much on public debt, that has high public debt or has high debt service to revenue ratio, tends to be a problem, because I've always said that Nigeria's issue is more fiscal crisis than FX crisis. There's a fiscal crisis that really determines your level of your FX crisis. So the sooner we're able to contain this debt profile, the better for us as a country. So the fact that these debt numbers are still high should be a concern to everyone. And so we want to keep an eye on Nigeria's public debt as we go on. All right. So in the news last week as well was Zenith Bank. Zenith Bank was in the news last week, but for good reasons. Zenith Bank announced the appointment of a new GMD CEO, and then they announced Dr. Adora Emoji as their new GMD CEO, and her appointment takes effect from June 1st, 2024, and she'll be replacing Dr. Ebenezer Onyago, whose tenure ends on the 31st of May, 2024. So Adora now is, with this announcement, the first female the first female CEO of Zenith Bank. Zenith Bank has been around since 1992 or so, like don't So she's the first and a female CEO. And a lot of people who know her would say that, look, I mean, this is some lady that joined the bank as a youth corps, as an NYC person, and she rose all the way to become CEO. So I guess it's a good role model for a lot of ladies out there, and just her appointment was quite celebrated. And she's an in-house person. I mean, she's worked with Zenny Bank all through the years, and Zenny Bank tends to like to appoint, GMDs from within the bank. Remember the past GMDs there have been, Jim Ovia himself, the founder of the bank, was once a GMD. Even Gordon Emefiele, he was once a GMD within the bank as well. And so we now have Adora as the new GMD of Zenny Bank. So congratulations to her. One thing that's interesting is that we tend to now see a lot of female bank CEOs. Now there are quite a number of them out there, and it's quite pleasing to note that we're now seeing, women dominate the banking sector essentially. Yes, some might argue that it's not just it's the hold calls. They are not, some are in the hold calls, some are in the bank, but it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we're seeing more women in banking. For example, Access Holding has Balaji as Group CEO of the holdco, of course not the bank, the holdco, and then we'll have Olusanya Miriam, CEO of the bank, that's GT Bank itself, not the holdco, and we have NECA as well, Unyali as Group MD of Fidelity Bank. Fidelity Bank does have a holdco. We have Yemisi Edo as MD of FCMB Bank, not the holdco, the bank. You have Tony Samfon of Unity Bank. They don't have a holdco there, but so she is, virtually in charge. They have Yetunde Oni as well, recently appointed as MD, GMD of Union Bank. And then we also have Halima Abuba of SunTrust Bank. Yeah, she's the GMD of SunTrust Bank. Of course, we have Ireti Samuel Ogu of Citibank as well. I think there's also Bukola Smith of FSDH. So, I mean, those are, a lot of bank CEOs today that are all female. So, we've come a long way. And there's a whole lot of women as well doing a lot of beautiful stuff in the financial services sector. So, watch out for the Nairametrics exclusive and all of them. And, we have a lot more women in leadership positions. So, congratulations to Adora there. And then we'll go on to the next big story. So last week, something funny happened, guys. PZ wants to delist. Yeah, they want to exit the stock market. That's in line with a lot of stuff that's been happening with FX and losses, foreign companies that are essentially struggling. So what we're seeing is that a lot of foreign companies, because of the Nigeria's FX problems over the years, have essentially borrowed a lot of money from their parent companies. And to get that money back would, in a way, require that they dilute their existing shareholders. So for some of them, it just doesn't make any sense continuing as a listed company anyway. So they just want to pull out and delist from those companies. And so PZ applied to delist. This has been on for some months now, and they applied to the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to delist. But SEC denied them. SEC did not allow them to list. We're going to find out why at some point this week, so that we can get clarity from SEC why they denied them. But the gist is that SEC denied them the right to list. And Nairametrics did get in touch with shareholders of PZ. And so the shareholders are ecstatic. They were like, yes, it was good that SEC denied them because as far as they're concerned, they think that the share price that PZ is offering minority shareholders is too small. So to buy the minority shareholders out, PZ was offering them 23 naira per share. Minority shareholders wanted something in the region of 40 naira per share as the fair price, buying them out. So basically, if you want to buy out your minority shareholders, they tend to always ask for premium over the current share price or the stock is being traded on the exchange. That is typically what happens. And so the current shareholders want to be bought out at a price that they think is reasonable for them, what they feel is the real market value of the stock. So in fact, to quote one of them, he says the management of PZ, represented by the majority shareholder, had attempted to discreetly disadvantage minority shareholders through a delisting payment offer of a meager 23 naira. This is not me, this is what our shareholder is saying. Despite requests for a fairer offer of 40 naira, reflecting the stock's market value and considering the challenges faced by PZ shareholders, including inconsistent dividend payments and prevailing economic conditions. So, to be honest, I really don't know where my minority shareholders want this to go or how far they want this to go. But, the point is that the stock is not doing too well. They're facing a lot of challenges. And I really don't know if the company actually has, can really afford to pay 40 naira per share. I mean, it's one thing for you to want 40 naira per share, but can the company actually meet up, with 40 naira per share? I to be honest, I don't know. And that is where this kind of gets a little bit, funny. But to be fair to them, I think PZ is trading at 36 naira per share. I think that's the last, share price that it traded. So probably close to the 40 naira that they're looking for. And so based on that, you really can't blame them. PZ share price is up 230% the last 1 year, in anticipation of all of this anyway. So interesting to see how this pans out. PZ already reported that Sentin approved their buyout plan. So I guess they're probably going to come back with another offer, or essentially just let this one go or let it fall through. But I suspect that they're going to come back with another offer to minority shareholders. So this is one to watch. So if you're somebody who has PZ shares, you will probably want to pay attention to what's going on here. Another interesting news last week, international breweries also in a similar situation. This is one company that has been struggling with profitability for some years. And so they have been posting losses for some years now. And the loss has basically put them in a hole. The hole means that they don't have enough money to pay dividends anymore. They have negative retained earnings of about 117 or so billion per their last result. And so this was because they've been incurring losses for some years, like I mentioned earlier. And so when a company is in that kind of situation, oftentimes it needs to recapitalize. And so international breweries, which is majority owned by AB InBev, which is basically the largest beer maker in the world. Yeah, AB InBev is the largest beer maker in the world. And so they control over 80% of the stock, about 87 or so percent of international breweries as is listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So they want to exit, and they are no, they don't want to exit. Sorry, my bad. So they've asked, they've gotten a special resolution to convert their shareholder loans into equity. Now, pretty interesting. Now, AB InBev lends international breweries, or international breweries owes AB InBev about $380 million, $379.9 million to be precise. And so how do you pay back that loan? You can pay back that loan from the company's profits or from the company's cash flow, or you can pay back that loan by raising equity and then paying back the related party loans. It's a related party loan. And so they are saying that's not what they want to do. They rather want to convert that loan into equity. So good thing, because international breweries doesn't need to, pay that loan from its revenues or from its cash flow, which it doesn't have, like I mentioned, because they're in losses. And so they're going to convert it to equity. So it will be interesting to see how this pans out, because at the end of the day, what is going to happen is they're going to essentially dilute the current shareholders of international bureaus, the minority shareholders. Like, what's going to be left? Like, the company as a whole, the market value of international bureaus, I'm not even sure it's anywhere close to the 33 or so, the $380 million that, of the debt that they're owing. So how exactly is this going to work out without wiping out existing shareholders? Remember that the majority shareholders of the company is AB InBev, anyways, with about 85% equity holding. So I really don't know how they want to do this. Pretty interesting to see how they would achieve this sort of conversion of debt to equity, saying that the company's market cap is about 140 billion naira. That's their market cap. So $380 million, 140 billion. So what's going to happen here? So you know what? This is usually an opportunity to also maybe want to pick up the shares of this company, because if the company is owing $380 million, the company is what? $380 million is roughly 400 billion naira, and the company is what? 140 billion naira. That means there's a value gap somewhere there. I don't know who's going to feel like that. So I'm interested to see how this pans out. So you want to maybe pay attention to international breweries as well. So Julius Berger, we go to the next stock. Julius Berger, last week did kind of something funny. They basically were like one of the top gainers last week, and I was trying to figure out what exactly was happening with that stock. I really don't know, but it came out of the blocks as one of the top gainers during the week, but then kind of fizzled out later, and then ended up as one of the top losers for the week. I don't know why. Typically, what we do know in Nigeria is that when stocks start to behave in this sort of way, maybe people already know that something is coming, perhaps from their result point of view or from a dividend point of view. They tend to know what's happening. That's what I suspect, because that's what tends to happen in Nigeria stocks. Somebody just knows something and you don't know what they know, or what they want to do. But why would Julius Berger stocks gain 30 or so percent and then end up losing 7% at the end of the week, and then joining the top losers, if it's not because they are likely going to announce their final results? They did announce interim results, and the company said they were making a profit after tax of 12.7 billion naira, and that was interim results. So final result is likely going to be out, or the audited account is likely going to be out very soon. That's what I suspect, and they would likely announce dividend. So maybe people already got wind about the dividend. I don't know, and I guess that was what caused the surge in price, and then later the price kind of fell off and ended up losing 7% week to date, and topping the price losers chart. Anyways, so that's one stock you want to pay attention to. Julius Berger, if you want to pay attention to that stock this week, and let's see how that stock performs. All right, so we've got a lot of stocks already. Pretty busy week, like I mentioned, and so let's just quickly go to how the stock market performed before we round up. Stock market is up 39.9%. Had a slight dip last week of 0.42%, and so still the best performing investments out there. Yes, the stock market is still the best investment out there. And in terms of the top gainers, I told you last week to pay attention to NEM Insurance. And yes, NEM Insurance gained 45% last week. So if you had bought NEM Insurance last week, you would have been up 45% in 1 week. Pay attention to that. Again, I've also said pay attention to international breweries. The shares was up 18% last week. I told you, this looks like there's a value gap somewhere there. So you might want to pay attention to that stock in the coming week. I did also mention Unity Bank, but not necessarily in a positive way, but Unity Bank is up 17.2% last week. And United Capital, my favorite stocks, also up 14.7% last week to join the top gainer. So this looks like, stocks that we're going to be paying attention to next week. So on my radar next week, like I mentioned, International Bureau is going to pay attention to that stock next week. Let's keep looking at net insurance. Looks like that stock is on a tier. It's at 9 naira 65 kobo. When I mentioned it last week, it was at 6 naira or so. So pay attention to that stock as we go on. All right. So that's pretty much the information I have for you this week on Follow the Money. By the way, I'm gonna be if you're anywhere in Lagos next week, you might want to check me out. I'm gonna be hosting a session where I would be one of the main speakers on Friday. I think I've got two actually. One is me speaking to CEOs of companies, who really want to make sense of Nigerian economy. So that is going to be coming up sometime this week. So you might want to be a part of it. It's organized by Lim Simple, and that is on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday. Yeah. So check my Twitter handle or my Instagram handle for details of that event in case you want to be part of it. So that's it for the week. Thank you all for listening. Again, if you want to listen to this show again, you want to stream it again, check it out on any of our podcast platforms, Spotify, Google Play Podcast, or your Apple Podcast. We do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30. Thanks for being a part of this. This is Follow the Money. My name is Ugodre, signing out, and do have a profitable